It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
Buongiorno tutti, buon capodanno, happy new year, that is, in Italian. Welcome to the show. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the cleverly titled Phil Ferguson Show. It is now 2019. 2018 is all behind us, and a little later, I'm going to have an Investing Skeptically segment that will give you all of the numbers for 2018 and how things did. So listen for that. And a little later on in the show, I have an interview with Nick, and Nick Fish is going to talk to us about American Atheists and their upcoming conference on Easter weekend of 2019. I think that's late April, Easter weekend. Yeah, so we'll be there. We're going to talk all about that, so I'll save that for later. Other upcoming things for Phil. In just a few short weeks, I will be in Austin, Texas, and I will be on the Atheist Experience. It apparently is some special anniversary weekend. The show has been up so many years, I can't remember which one. I'll have to look that up for the next episode, sorry. But I believe that's February 3rd, or that Sunday, whatever that Sunday is, if I have the wrong date. I'll be down there a couple days early and leaving after the show. So if you're in the area, let me know. Maybe I can tell you about other events, and maybe I will be on some of their other podcasts, because they now have 6, 8, 10 different podcasts coming out of the Austin, Texas area. So maybe I can get my way onto a few of the shows. But the Atheist Experience, February 3rd, and maybe I can have some fun arguments, or as they say in the show, have theists call and tell us what they believe and why, which is often much harder than you would imagine. People have a hard time explaining what they believe. They just believe it. So we'll have some fun with that. Of course, I will be at the American Atheists conference in Cincinnati in April, like we talked about, and we'll talk about a little later on. And we'll also talk about a new program to help offset the costs of students getting to the American Atheist Conference, and that will be all in the interview with Nick. So hang on tight. We're going to get into the show.
Hey you, it's me, Sarah Silverman. You know, lately I've noticed a lot of really sad, really long commercials on TV with like grossly sick, emaciated people from all over the world. And it turns out they look that way because they don't have food. And I know what you're thinking. If you don't like it, Silverman, TiVo passed it. I did. You still see them. Especially because, like, I have a 48-inch plasma high-def TV, so every devastating image is in, like, brilliant, crisp, vivid, like they're in my apartment, you know. So how do I get these people out of my apartment, basically? And I think I figured it out. Like, all I have to do is end world hunger. And then I'm like, okay, how are you going to end world hunger? And then it hit me. Sell the Vatican, feed the world. Think about it. We need a hero, and who is more primed to be our hero than the Pope? He's literally a caped crusader. What is the Vatican worth, like $500 billion? This is great. Sell the Vatican, take a big chunk of that money, build a gorgeous condominium for you and all of your friends to live in, all the amenities, swimming pool, tennis court, water slide. And with the money left over, feed the whole fucking world. You preach to live humbly, and I totally agree. So now maybe it's time for you to move out of your house that is a city. On an ego level alone, you will be the biggest hero in the history of ever. And by the way, any involvement in the Holocaust, bygones. I know some of you out there are like, well, why don't those bums get a job like the rest of us? Well, did you know that the average Arby's employee in Ethiopia only gets paid nothing an hour because they don't have one. They don't have one. The bottom line is this. If you sell the Vatican and you take that money and you use it to feed every single human being on the planet, you will get crazy pussy. All the pussy. And I don't mean literally. That might not be your cup of tea. I don't know what your version of all the pussy is. But you'll get all the pussy. Amen.
Today's Investing Skeptically segment is about 2018, the market performance, how different types of investments did during the calendar year of 2018. And I'm going to start with the most summary level information, and then I'll get into some granular detail. And this is something I think you can use to look at your statement. If you get a statement on 12/31, it'll probably come to you via PDF in a couple of days or in the actual mail within a week or so. You can pull that out and see how you did. And it just because you did better or worse than this doesn't mean your portfolio is correctly balanced. Maybe you got lucky. Maybe you had the wrong things that happened to do better than the averages. But it might also indicate that you have problems with your portfolios. And it's always tricky because if I were to look at data for 3 months, the market in the last 3 months, the last quarter of 2018, it went down quite a bit to the point where it's a correction. I don't know. I didn't look. Is it 10, 15%? I'm not that worried what the market did over 3 months. I'm not even that really worried what it did over a year. I'm much more interested in long-term performance, but it's nice to do a reality check to see how you're doing. So we'll start at the top level and then get into more detail as I go along. It's going to be a lot of numbers. If you just want to hear them and you're driving, that's fine. Keep going. But if you want to take notes, obviously do what you have to do to be in that position. I'll start with the U.S. stock market, the total U.S. stock market. And these are all going to be as measured by a Vanguard index fund. So it might be off a few tenths or hundredths of a percent, but it's in the right ballpark. The total stock market index, VTSAX, the Admiral shares of the total stock market index for the last year, all of this is going to be ending 12/31 of 18, was minus 5.17%. So that is the total return of the stock market for 2018, minus 5.17%. Not up, definitely not horrible down, but a down year. That's what the numbers say. But keep in mind, we've had almost 10 straight years, or we have had actually 10 straight years, where the market's gone up. It did have corrections within calendar years in the past 10 years of up to 15%, and then the market came back and went up even more. This is the first time where you are able to see the market going down in a calendar year time period. And the last couple of years, of course, did fairly well. So the average 3-year return for the total stock market in the U.S. is 8.99%, almost 9%. And the 5-year is 7.9, almost 8%. And 10 years is 13.25% per year. And a lot of that is because there were 2 really big years where the market went up around 30% after the drop in 2008. So that 13.2 might be a little extra high than normal, in part because 2008 was a big drop year. So if we start measuring from 2009, of course, that first year was really good. So that to me doesn't indicate that the market in and of itself is overheated in any way, shape, or form, particularly after a 10 or 15 or 20% correction that we've had in the last several months. So that's nice to see. The S&P 500, if you look at that, and that's often easier for information for you to get, and this again is measured by the Vanguard fund that measures the S&P 500 or tracks the S&P 500, that's minus 4.43% per year. So it did better. So large caps did slightly better than small caps, and the small caps, as measured by the extended market, are minus 9.39 or 9.4. So if you have a portfolio of all U.S. stocks and it's all small caps, you might have lost 9.4%. If it's all large caps, you might have lost 4.4. So somewhere between minus 4 and worst case minus 9, hopefully something closer to minus 6 or 7 in your stock holdings is a reasonable benchmark to look at. Now, if you look at your stock funds, if you have mutual funds that are trying to beat the market and they've done better than that, congratulations. If they've done dramatically worse than that, if your stocks are down minus 12, minus 15, minus 20%, you should ask yourself, why is that? Or maybe even more importantly, if you can get the 3 or 5 or even 10-year data, why are you underperforming? Because it's much more fair to judge in a longer time period. So if the total stock market has made 13% per year for the last 10 years, how much have you made? Has it been 8%? Is it 17%? Just some reference points. Also in stocks mostly, but a little bit in non-stocks, is the Vanguard REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. For the year, it's down 6%, 5.95. So that was not helpful either. That was still down about 6%. And the total international fund, VTIAX, was minus 14.43%, so down over 14%. So international stocks, as measured by the Vanguard Total International Stock Fund, was down even more, minus 14.4%. And when we go to bonds, I'm going to start with, again, the total summary level. If you had just the total bond index fund, which is a very quick and easy way to own all kinds of bonds, it's not something I've been recommending over the last few years because it does hold intermediate and long-term bonds. But we're going to, again, start at the summary level. All bonds, basically, that returned 0.03 negative. So practically even, just about flat, which is okay. It's way better than negative. I mean, it's negative 0.03, but it's about flat. It's about 0. So the cushion, if you had it in the total bond index, it did its job, and it didn't go down as much as the stocks did. So if you're in retirement, you could sell money out of there. Now, if you have all of your money in a target date fund, depending on the exact mix, or if you have a mix of things, and I'm just going for the sake of this discussion, if you have 30% in the total bond market index, 45% in the total stock market, 5% in REITs, and 20% in the international fund, all of that worked out to a negative return of minus 5.52. So the stocks helped, or the bonds helped you have not a minus 7 or 8 or 10% return, but a minus 5% return. If you're in retirement and need money out of your portfolio, this is one of those years you probably want to take out from the bonds. You still have bond dividends and you have stock dividends, and then the rest of the money you can take out of by selling bonds or bond funds. And this might be where, if you have a target date fund, you would have a problem because your overall portfolio might have lost 5.5% only. But if you want to sell something, you have to sell from that one and only position at a loss of minus 5% versus 0 in a total bond fund. So that's something that is another reason not to have target date funds, particularly in retirement. And I'm going to break out some of the different bond positions to show you how some of those did. And I'll start with the most conservative type of bonds. That's the short-term government bonds for the one-year period returned 1.35%. Their yield is now around 3%, but the return is 1.35. So you ask yourself, if it pays a 3% yield, why does it only return 1.35%? Because the 1.35 includes the yield that you were paid out and the drop in price of the bonds within that portfolio. Because as interest rates go up, the value of bonds that you hold go down. And the longer term the bond is, the more dramatic that is. So I'm going to continue to look at government bonds here for a minute. The real short term is 2.97. The intermediate government bonds, the yield is now currently at 2.7, which is lower than the short term, which is very unusual and a little concerning, but it happens. And the long-term government bond, the yield is 3.03. So all of them around 3%. The long-term bonds did lose 1.67% this year because interest rates have been going up. At some point during the year, maybe like June, July, August, long-term bonds, U.S. government bonds, were down 9%. Now, the reason the value went back up is because as the stock market came down, people took money out of stocks. It's simple supply and demand. That's why prices went down, with some concerns about the economy and the market, which may or may not be relevant or real or reliable. Not saying that, but that's what people did. They took money out of the stock market and bought bonds. And so as more people buy bonds, the prices of bonds go up and the yield doesn't go up, but the prices go up. So the losses got eaten away. So the losses weren't as big as they were just a few months ago. But if interest rates continue to go up, if long-term interest rates go up and people get less concerned about the stock market, if there at some point is a rush out of high-quality bonds, U.S. government bonds, the losses there could be significant. So it's something that you should look at in your portfolio. What kind of bonds do you have? If you have short-term government or corporate, you made a few points. A lot of other things lost money. One notable exception, the total international bond index fund did make almost 3%, even though its yield is around 1%. A lot of other countries have interest rates that are as low or lower than the United States now. So there was a place where you did okay, but that's another place where you don't want to have too much money. A small part of your bonds should be international. Emerging market bonds lost 3.5%, and high yield junk bonds lost about 3%. So not really any good place to hide to make a whole lot of money this year. Maybe there's some commodity or something that you could find that made money, but a lot of things are down. So it's a rough year. If you had a good chunk of your money in bonds and a good chunk of that in short term, you did okay. That's a time to evaluate your overall portfolio and take a look at the bonds and make sure you're not too much into high yield or junk bonds or emerging market bonds. Sometimes people get overweighted in those things when we have a period of low interest rates. So U.S. government bonds pay about 3. Corporate bonds can pay 3.5, 4.5, maybe close to 5. If you have a bond fund that shows a yield of over 5%, you should take a serious look at that. How are they doing that? And the curious thing is, if you have a 5% yield, how did that fund do in 2018? Did you make 5% or did you lose 5 or 10%? So take a look at that. The bonds are important because if they're supposed to be there for you when the stock market goes down, this was a nice test. The stock market went down a little bit. Did your bond funds protect you? Or did they go down just as much or worse than your stock holdings? Take a look at that. And now I want to break down the U.S. stock market a little bit. If you have a larger portfolio, a couple 100,000 or more, I often break up the U.S. position into 6 different funds: large cap growth, large cap value, mid cap growth and value, small cap growth and value. And so I'm going to look at how those 6 funds did in relationship to each other for calendar year 2018. Large cap growth was minus 3.3. Large cap value was minus 5.4. I'm rounding a little bit, not that it matters that much, but 3.3, 5.4, negative. Mid-cap growth is minus 5.6. Mid-cap value is minus 12.4. Small-cap value is also minus 12.2, and small-cap growth is minus 5.7. So all those things went down. The small caps and mid caps did considerably worse than the large caps, and the value funds overall did worse than the growth funds. What do we do with that information? Not a whole lot at this point, but when I look at 3 and 5 years, I can see that small caps have underperformed large caps by quite a bit. The large cap, as measured by the S&P 500 over 5 years, is 8.5, and the extended market is 5.1. So that makes me want to start tilting more towards small and mid caps. Not real powerful instruction, not a real powerful thing for me to consider, but if you have a portfolio and you add a few $1,000s, consider adding it to the things that have lost the most, a la international or small cap or mid cap value. So you're doing your rebalancing by adding to what has underperformed. If you have a larger portfolio, it might be a time to sell something that did really well and add to something that has not done really well. But that's up to you. If you have questions about all this or want more details or how to look up these numbers, you can email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com, and we'll take a quick little break and get on with our interview. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship.
I like how you call homosexuality an abomination.
I don't say homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does.
Yes, it does. Leviticus
18:22.
chapter and verse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions while I had you here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery, as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. She's a Georgetown sophomore, speaks fluent Italian, always cleared the table when it was her turn. What would a good price for her be? While thinking about that, can I ask another? My chief of staff, Leo McGarry, insists on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 clearly says he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police? Here's one that's really important, because we've got a lot of sports fans in this town. Touching the skin of a dead pig makes one unclean, Leviticus 11:7. If they promise to wear gloves, can the Washington Redskins still play football? Can Notre Dame? Can West Point? Does the whole town really have to be together to stone my brother John for planting different crops side by side? Can I burn my mother in a small family gathering for wearing garments made from 2 different threads? Think about those questions, would you? One last thing. While you may be mistaking this for your monthly meeting of the Ignorant Tight-Ass Club, in this building when the president stands, nobody sits.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Another special guest today. We have Nick Fish, who is the president of American Atheists. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing well, Phil. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. And we were going to talk about all kinds of fun things. And you guys have this big conference coming up. Can you tell us some about that?
Yeah, absolutely can. Our national conference is this year, Easter weekend in Cincinnati, Ohio. You can learn more about the conference at aacon2019.org or just visit atheists.org. It's at the front page of our website. It will be April 19th to the 21st in 2019 at the Hilton Netherland Plaza Hotel, which is this really fantastic French Art Deco hotel right in downtown Cincinnati, just right around the corner from Fountain Square. Our conference is essentially the largest social event in the atheist community each year. It's a really fantastic opportunity to get to know the fellow members of our community, to hear from interesting speakers and some really new perspectives, and just to get some really great skills about how to do activism and education, and really focus in on the issues that matter to our community. And so that's, I really can't emphasize how much fun people have at our events. Last year, our keynote speaker was Hugh Laurie. This upcoming year, we haven't yet announced the lineup, but we're going to be doing that the next few weeks here. I can tell you that we've had almost 100 people make proposals to speak at our conference, and that doesn't include the people that we've been reaching out to internally to bring in for the event as well. So it's sure to be another really fantastic, really well-attended and very diverse set of perspectives that you'll hear from our stage.
Well, and I wanted to point that out, and you segued right into it perfectly, that you guys had a period of time, and it's now closed, so listeners, you're too late, but you had a period of time where you solicited anybody to submit a proposal for a talk, a presentation, a workshop, and I've submitted a few, and I know you're not the decider. There's a committee in charge of that, but I got my fingers crossed. But it's delightful to hear that 100 different people have, or at least 100 different proposals have been made. So hopefully we have some new stuff that we've never seen before anywhere.
Yeah, and I can tell you right offhand that the different people who have made proposals, these are names that you've heard in many cases, but in probably more than half of them are people that I don't think have appeared on any stage at any atheist conference before, which is extremely exciting for me. I think that one of the things that this community does really well is not fall into the trap of only listening to the same people over and over again, highlighting people who are presenting new and interesting topics and have new and interesting perspectives. And it's something that I think that American Atheists does a really great job of, is really showing off the strength of our community, both from an academic perspective, but also from just a life experience perspective, where we have people wanting to talk about aging, about what happens as you grow older as an atheist. We have people talking about history, about history of religion, history of the United States. We have people talking about philosophy. We have people talking about politics. We have people talking about music and art and poetry and philanthropy, and the list really just goes on and on, are just some of the things that were proposed. And I think that that's really important, to have people that you've never heard from before talking to you, to challenge your preconceptions, to ensure that we're not holding on to any sacred cows, so to speak.
Right.
That we're really challenging every preconception we have, because we don't believe in putting people on the stage just to reinforce what we think we already know. We want to challenge those preconceptions so we can be better, and that's a really important component to this.
Sure. And when will this full list be made available?
So we're going to be announcing, we're going to be notifying speakers if they're selected no later than the end of the first week of January.
Okay.
And then from there, we'll work out some of the details and the make sure that all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And then we'll roll out the full speaker lineup shortly after that. But anybody who proposed a workshop or a talk, we'll let them know right after the new year.
Fantastic. And the date of the conference again was what? April something?
Yep, it is Easter weekend, April 19th to the 21st, 2019, in Cincinnati, Ohio. And again, you can get more information, including reserving your hotel, really great room rate for $105, and buy your tickets at aacon2019.org.
Now, are you guys doing anything special with the Creation Museum or the Ark? Because that's in the neighborhood,
Yeah, we're working on it. The really fantastic thing that happened is that Ken Ham has decided to have a counter convention, I suppose, to the same weekend as ours. So they're spending their Easter weekend having an anti-atheist conference, which I think is a really fantastic use of their time. It's interesting when they when you look at the prices, ours is a lot cheaper. So if you want to actually learn science and actually get information that's relevant and accurate, it's a veritable bargain, which is really great. They're doing the work for us, so we really appreciate the shout out from Ken Ham.
Hey, thanks, Ken. We still love you as much as always.
Love him like any of our fellow humankind. That's right. It's a shared connection.
It's good to have a little foil, someone for us to have some fun with. Now, last year, I did a program where I helped sponsor a lot of new members.
Yep.
Where I would they would pay $5 because I wanted them to have some kind of commitment. So they paid $5 and I paid the extra, and you got a couple hundred new members. That was cool.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It was, and anyone who joined, for all your listeners who joined through that, I can't tell you how much we appreciated it. And having new people joining as members really is the lifeblood of this organization. So if you're a listener and you joined through that, thank you, and certainly thank you, Phil.
Oh, my pleasure. And I was thinking about what can I do this year, and I don't want to do the exact same thing every year. Maybe I'll do that next year, but I definitely didn't want to do it a second year because I didn't want someone who got in on only $5 to renew at just $5. The whole idea is that now that you got a free year from Phil, or you were only paid $5, the next year you can pay the whole amount and get all the perks and benefits that come with that. So you and I were talking pre-show, which doesn't exist, listeners. It got deleted. It's pre-show. We were talking about what can we do to offset the cost for students. And my first idea, silly me, was to reduce the ticket prices for students. But you told me that ticket prices are only how much for a student?
$50. We give a heck of a deal for students. So if you're a college, university, grad student, or high school student, or middle school student, tickets are $50. If you're a younger middle school student coming with your family, or if you're someone who wants to bring your younger kids, they get in for free. But it's hard to reduce it much more than that.
But, so I was trying to figure out, okay. So if we reduce that from 50 to 0, again, we could do that. Phil could provide money to do that. My listeners maybe could help support that. But you pointed out that there was something for students that's a bigger problem than the $50, which was what?
The hotel. I think when we talk to students, the single biggest cost that they have is getting there and staying there. The conference itself is pretty accessible pricing wise for students, and that's a choice that we make because we really value students being able to attend our events and learn from our workshops and hear from our speakers and participate in the social side of things as well. But the hotel is what it is. We have a really great room rate for people attending the conference of just $105 per night. But for students, that can kind of get out of hand quickly. That's certainly a fixed cost that we really I can't reduce it myself. I can't waive that for students coming in. And so, we were talking about how to offset that cost. And you want to share what your idea was?
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing is that, it's always tricky when you have some kind of money or subsidy and you want to help somebody, because do you have students come up to you and you hand them cash, or do you have them turn in receipts for their mileage or show you where they ate? And we don't want to make it laborious for American Atheists.
And it's not Congress. You can't just show up with an envelope full of money.
That's right. It's
a little bit different. Yeah.
So I think what we were talking about was maybe my listeners can help, because I've started a Patreon page, and some people have said, Phil, you said you don't need the money from the Patreon page, which is true. And I've looked at some other podcasters, and they give away a large portion of the money they make from Patreon. So I thought, hey, you know what I'll do? Every single dollar that comes in January, February, and March, no matter how big it is, I don't think it's going to be more than a couple grand, but if it's $20,000, I'm going to give 100% of everything that comes in January, February, and March through Patreon. That's patreon.com/Phil. It's really easy to find. And then to sweeten the pot, I'm going to match the first $5,000. So if listeners, if you donate $5,000 in January, February, and March through Patreon, you're going to not only not give me money because I'm going to give it to American Atheists, I'm going to add $5,000 to that. And we were kicking around the ideas, Nick and I, about how to offset these costs. And we were talking about the hotel rooms, because maybe you could comp those for some students somehow.
That's right. And so what we've done is we're going to put together a travel grant program for students and student groups that would like to attend American Atheists National Convention, where you can apply for travel grants to cover the cost of your hotel and the cost of your admission. So you've still got to get to the conference, but once you're there, Phil and American Atheists will put you up, and Phil's listeners will help with that. And so, listeners, this is a great opportunity for you to not only support what Phil's doing, but to support the next generation of student activists in our community, which is, I think we can all agree, the only way for this movement, for this experiment of ours to survive, is to bring in new blood.
Absolutely.
And I really can't thank you enough for that. I think it's really going to make a big difference. I was just looking at the numbers here.
Yeah, talk to me.
If we hit that number, you said you're going to match up to $5,000.
Yeah.
And let's assume we hit that.
Okay.
Just some rough back of the envelope math here. We're looking at helping between 100 and 150 students, depending on how taxes come out on the room rates. 100 to 150 students make it to this conference, which is huge. Our conference normally has about 1,000 people. And of that 1,000, somewhere between a quarter and a third are students. And so that's fantastic. And that's exactly the type of conference that we want to have.
You're assuming they're putting a couple of students per room?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
sharing.
I think the hotels are 2 queen bed suites and a couch. So you've got enough room for, 3 or 4 people, depending on how you arrange everybody. But yeah, you can, we're talking about 100 to 150 students here, which is huge.
And one thing I want to make sure everyone understands, do not contact Phil about these grants.
No, keep an eye. Follow American Atheists on Twitter. Follow American Atheists on Facebook. Sign up for our email alerts. We will let you know as soon as the process is up and running. We'll be announcing it shortly here.
And of course, as soon as you have a link or a page or something, I'll mention that as well. But so
absolutely.
This is a way where maybe, let's say, four students coming from a university or a high school together, they'd have to pay the $50, so they've got some investment in the conference themselves. They have to figure out how to get there, and maybe they carpool, so the cost is not too much. And through this grant program, their housing, the hotel room, would be covered.
Right.
I think that sounds pretty cool.
I think it sounds fantastic. And like I said, it's a great way for people to offset what is usually the hardest part about getting there. I know that when I was in college, the way that we would do everything was to pile everybody into somebody's minivan,
right,
and chip in $10 for gas money or whatever it was, and we would drive halfway across the Midwest. I went to school in Michigan, and we drove to the southern tip of Indiana for a fraternity event, I remember, in somebody's mom's minivan with 7 or 8 of us crammed into this thing, and made it work. And, this is the sort of event that we would have done that for. So I think this is a really fantastic opportunity for students, especially students in the Midwest, anybody within driving distance. This makes it pretty easy for you all to get to the conference, which I think we're pretty excited about.
Well, which is one of the reasons, allegedly, that Ken Ham picked that area for his ARC.
That's right.
And his museum is because I think from Chicago proper to Cincinnati is 5.5 hours. From, if you draw a big circle, you cover a whole lot of the United States. I mean, we're starting to get into the Northeast. We're getting all the way down close to Florida. We're getting almost to Texas. A big chunk of the United States. If you guys are students and you know some students, you can share this information. We'll get more details out as they become available. They can get in for $50 a person, have their room covered if they apply for and get approved by the grant, which Phil has freaking nothing to do with. That's going to be run by American Atheists. And the size of those grants and the number of grants that are going to be given away will be dependent on how much money people contribute at Patreon, patreon.com/Phil. So what I'll do is I'll give Nick a regular update so they can start handing out money sooner because they don't want to do it all at the end.
Right.
But if my listeners contribute $5,000 at patreon.com/Phil, I will match that with another $5,000. If you guys give more than that, that's cool. All of it's going to go to this program. So we can help maybe 100, maybe 130, maybe 150. And if you guys get crazy, 200 students, that'd be kind of cool that we can help offset their costs. We increase the number of people at a conference. We get more young people involved. And quite frankly, Nick, if you don't mind me saying, it increases the overall energy of a conference to have a lot of students there.
No, I totally agree. And, we're looking at nearly 100 workshops and plenary sessions and speakers at this event who've proposed workshops and trainings and sessions. And a lot of them are focused on students. And so I think that there's no shortage of exciting, informative, helpful things for students to do at this event, above and beyond just attending and getting to know other members of the community, getting to know other students. We certainly will partner with the Secular Student Alliance and other student groups within our community and from outside the community as well. We're working with local activists in the Cincinnati area, including our affiliates at the Tri-State Freethinkers, but also groups like Planned Parenthood and NARAL from NARAL, Ohio, the Food Bank, all sorts of different groups that people can get involved with at the conference. And that's what we want this to be about, is making those connections, getting to know just how many atheists there are in this nation and the impact that we can have when we actually work together and get stuff done.
Sure. And one other super secret thing that you and I talked about before the show, and if I reveal too much, let me know and I can edit this out. You had mentioned something about podcasters. Is that public yet?
Yeah, we're going to be announcing it soon. I'm happy to share it for your listeners today. We're working with podcasters and YouTubers and all sorts of content creators to have sort of a broadcast row at our conference where if you're a podcaster or a content creator who does this sort of show and would like to attend as a media person or with a media pass, we have space set up and ready to go with electricity and with internet and all that, so that you can do recordings at our conference with our speakers, with our staff members, and with the other members of our community who are going to be there. Talk about the issues that you want to talk about, learn more about the work that our speakers and our presenters are doing, and interview them and have them on your show. And essentially do live podcasts and get some really great content. And we are doing that for free. We want people at the event having those conversations. We think it's a really important part of having these events. And that's why we're doing it. So expect an announcement about that shortly. We're doing some outreach now to get some people in the door to start, and then we'll have a sign up for it as well. So if you're a podcaster that we didn't get a hold of, or somebody whose contact information we didn't have, or someone we haven't heard of yet, we want you to get in touch with us and let us know that you'd like to attend. For right now, before we have that page up and running, you can email us at convention@atheists.org. Again, that's convention@atheists.org. And we'll get in touch because we'd love to have you.
And so before we even get the details of the regular convention stuff, which in itself, it's not going to be regular because we're going to have new speakers and new ideas. We're going to have an extra lot of young students because their costs are going to be offset as much as we can with some grants. We're going to have a lot of podcasters and YouTubers there in a special area where they can do their stuff and have access to people. I'm getting excited, dude. I'm thinking we're going to top 1,000 this time. What do you think?
I think it would certainly be a great goal for us. The venue, we might have to spill out into Fountain Square in Cincinnati if we go too crazy, but that's a good problem to have. I'd love for that to happen. I can tell you we've already got, without having announced any speakers yet, and we're still, 4 months out, we've got more than 350 people registered as of today.
Well, I know I've booked, and I've also booked my hotel room because I know I'm going. So I figured as soon as possible, as soon as I found the super secret link, But that's the registration is now public, right? That's open.
Yeah, everything's public. And speaking of the hotel, we're at about 3/4 capacity. So you're going to want to register for your hotel sooner rather than later as well.
Yeah.
In the past, I think every year that I've worked for American Atheists, this is going to be my 7th year, we've had to book another hotel because we've run out of space at the original hotel. So book it while you can. Get our super great rate at the convention hotel, because it's a lovely hotel that they're doing a renovation on right now. So it'll be freshly done when we're there, and it's just a wonderful place to be. A really fantastic venue. And one thing I don't think I've even mentioned to you, but something I know we haven't touched on yet today, is for the first time we're having a free dinner. Our evening awards dinner and reception will be completely free for the first 500 registrants.
I see.
So if you sign up and get your tickets quickly, and you're one of the first 500 to register, you will get a free dinner. Those are normally, we usually do them at cost, but that's somewhere between, $40 and $55, depending on the hotel. And you're getting it for free, thanks to the generosity of Eddie Tabash, another really strong advocate for church-state separation and for atheist causes. And so we have a lot of people helping to make this event accessible and inviting and welcoming for as many people in this community as possible. And you and your listeners are part of that, and I can't thank you enough for it.
Well, and it's one of those things that I hope to leverage my platform, because I know I have a lot of listeners who are, how shall we say this? They're doing okay. They have some money. They've made some money. They're making good money. And whether they can go or not go, and I hope that a lot of them do go, they can swing a few bucks to help students go, to make sure that this movement keeps growing and we have the energy and people to replace people that maybe want to retire or get burnt out or do something else. So listeners, that's your chance. Go to patreon.com/Phil. Every single dollar that's donated January, February, and March of 2019, I will give 100% of that to American Atheists, and I will match out of my own pocket the first 5,000. So there's no limit. Whatever you guys want to give, that's going to go straight to American Atheists. Is there anything we've not covered yet, Nick?
Not about the convention. I just want to emphasize to people that this is going to be a different conference than you've seen in the past, as far as the people that we're going to have on stage. We're going to have some favorites, but as always, we want to make sure that people are hearing new perspectives, and that we're emphasizing the things that people have said they like the best about our conferences, which is getting to spend time with the community, having an opportunity to socialize and get to know each other, but also learning something, learning some practical skills about how to get involved in politics, how to organize, how to get out there and protest, how to do service projects, where to turn when you have resources or when you need resources, and how to build a community that helps people get away from religion as they leave. That's a really important component of what we're doing here. And so, this will be a really fantastic conference, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, I look forward to it. Hopefully you or somebody else can come in a few weeks or a month or two or something and give us more details as they formalize. And of course, listeners, as soon as Nick sets up the program for students to contact to get these grants, I'll share that on the show. But Nick, thank you so much for the work that you do. I know you need to get back to work and fight the good fight for the separation of church and state. I appreciate you taking some time out to talk to us here on the Phil Ferguson Show.
It's great to be here. And once again, thank you. And thank you, your listeners.
You're listening to the Phil Ferguson Show.
I do hope you've been enjoying the show. I've got a couple of reviews to read here. Thankfully, all 3 are 5-star reviews at iTunes. So thank you. Thank you very much for doing that. As you got probably from the previous interview, yes, I now do have a Patreon page, and you can go and donate there. You can contribute, donate. I'm not sure. You can become a patron. I'm not quite sure how to phrase that yet. But everything that is brought in, everything that is contributed, in the months of January, February, and March, I will take and send to American Atheists to offset travel expenses for students that want to go to the American Atheist Conference. So I don't know what I'll do with future money coming in from Patreon. Some of it I will probably enjoy, but a good chunk of it I will do things like this, where I'll be giving it to American Atheists 100%, and not only 100%, but the first $5,000 I will match myself out of pocket. So if you guys contribute $5,000, I'll put in another $5,000. So $10,000 will go to offset a lot of student travel expenses or housing expenses for the American Atheist Conference. And now for a couple of reviews on iTunes. Like I said, the first one is from James. Phil's sage advice always has me learning more about the world of investments, most importantly, what to avoid. The secular side of his show is always fascinating, and it's nice to have a finance guy in our Read Atheist corner. Also, Phil does answer your email. I once sent him an email regarding a rollover of some former employer retirement funds, and the man called me himself on the cell phone not 30 minutes later. Incredible dedication to his and selfless service. I think I read that wrong. My apologies. Continue here. I hope to meet him at a conference one of these days. Thank you, James. Very kind words. Another review. I'm going to cut this short because it's pretty long, but I like it very much. Harvey 2525. No nonsense investment advice and parts on secular conversation. So it goes on nice and long, and he's very, very kind and flattering, and says that, I called him back or answered his email. And an important part at the end here said, he said he would not allow payments. It's a fiduciary thing. So I'm donating to the Secular Student Alliance instead. Listen to the podcast. It's worth your time. Thank you, Harvey 2525. I appreciate it very much. And it is true. If you send me an email, it helps if you include your phone number. Do not include personal information. I mean, you can tell me your age and some details about you, but don't send your social security number. Don't send your date of birth. Definitely don't attach any statements or documents. Everybody's been really good about that lately. A couple years ago, people were just sending me statements out of the blue. Send me an email. I'll call you. We can set up a time, or maybe I just call you because I have a few minutes free and we can answer your question in a few minutes. And if you want me to review documents later, we can get to that point, but just don't send them blindly, because if you type the email address wrong, you could send important documents to someone else. So we definitely don't want that. So again, my email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Last review here is a nice short one, and it looks like Miho 2000. So I'm just going to go with that. Phil's show is a perfect combination of two things I am concerned about: atheism and finance. I really enjoy listening and learning from the show. Keep up the great work, Phil. Well, again, thank you very much for those kind words. I am still trying to work with the hosting company where I put the podcast up originally about ads. I'm not sure how that's going to work out yet, but I'm kind of leaning towards ads. And a lot of the emails that I received about this were basically saying things like, Phil, if there's money available to take, why wouldn't you take it? A lot of people said everything has commercials. I kind of expect it and I can skip them. And a good chunk of people said, go ahead, get the ads, but make sure you open up a Patreon page where I can give you $1 and skip all the ads, which is what inspired the Patreon page, was email suggestions from you, the listeners. So if you want to get ahead of the curve and not even start hearing the ads, the Patreon page is all set up. Patreon.com/Phil. You heard it in the interview. You can go do that now. I don't know when the ads will start, and I'm not 100% sure how much control I will have over the random ads that get placed within, before, or after the show. I'm going to ask for them to not run investment stuff, but I don't know if I have that kind of control. But if I do get to the point where I read ads, like endorsement things for things you hear in a lot of podcasts, those will be things that I will pick and choose, and I'll be very, very selective on. So maybe Pimsleur will have me read a review or talk about how great their product is, because I love Pimsleur for learning a new language. That'd be nice. But as an example, if Betterment or Robinhood or Acorns ask me to do a commercial where I tell you about how great it is, I will not be doing that, period. It doesn't matter how much money they offer me. But the random ads that show up before, there's a lot of variables, so I'm told. And I know that when I was in Italy before, I would get Italian ads, so I may not have much control over those. And I think everyone will understand that they just show up. It's like watching a TV show. When you see a TV show for Cialis, when you're watching a murder mystery, it doesn't mean that the murder mystery supports Cialis. So I think everyone's clear on that. I'm still welcoming your thoughts, but keep it nice. I did get one email, which someone basically said, let me see if I can paraphrase this right. You are stealing people's time to make money, and if you put on ads, I'm going to stop listening to your show, period. Okay. I can never make everyone happy. If you consider ads to be stealing of your time, I'm sorry. I don't know what it is you watch or listen to where you never get ads. Can you not ride on a bus then because there's ads on the ceiling? I don't know. I wasn't really sure how to respond to that. It seemed pretty draconian. But, the show is free, just saying. And it takes a lot of work. And hopefully it's a little extra inducement for me to make more shows to cover some of the time that I spend putting the show together. Anyway, I'm going to wrap that up. Hopefully I see you somewhere soon. February 3rd, I think it is, the first Sunday in February, I will be in Austin on the Atheist Experience. And then in April, I will be at the American Atheists Convention in Cincinnati. I hope to see you somewhere soon. Until then, ciao.
I'm bringing Jesus back. Yep. These atheists don't know how to act. Yep. I think Satan better watch his back. Yep. So just keep praising him and don't you slack. Yep. Take him to the cross. The Bible, babe. You see these verses, that's how I got saved. The Holy Ghost is what I crave. It's just that Jesus makes me feel this way. Take him to the cross. Come here, child, cause Jesus wants you. Come to the cross where he bought you. G-O-D, now you can see. Pray for me, I'll pray for thee. See who you hanging with? Go ahead, be going with them. Look at those sins, now it's forgiven. Cause he'll make you smile. Go ahead, walk with him. Come here, child, don't be wild. Get your bowing out, we gotta go to church. Get your bowing out, we gotta go to church. Get your bowing out, we gotta go to church. Get your bowing out, we gotta go to church. Get your Jesus on, cause he loves you. Get your Jesus on, cause he loves you. Get your Jesus on, cause he... Get your Jesus on. I'm bringing Jesus back. Yep. Those heathen brothers don't know how to act. Yep. He will make up for the things you lack. Yep. Don't wanna burn, and that's a fact. Yep. Take him to the chapel, Calvary Chapel, babe.